Morning, McLaren fans. Today is Sunday morning and I am going to change the oil on this McLaren 720S right here. I'm going to show you guys how to do that yourself with all the parts. Obviously the first thing we got to do is actually warm up the car and get the oil to operating temperature so that it flows properly. I was able to acquire all the parts necessary. Basically for an oil change, all you need is 10 gallons of Mobil 10W40. You need a copper crush washer, an aluminum crush washer, and the Moly oil filter with the appropriate O-rings. A quick hint for you guys, if you can't seem to get your lift's legs or feet underneath the car in the front, use your front lift system. You can lift it up, it'll raise it up to stick under any two-post lift like this. It's a pretty thick post and it got under there. Yep. So one issue that I ran into is that with my lift, the clearance here between, and let me see, there's not enough light here. Let me turn this light on, flashlight. The clearance between my carbon fiber door and the one part of the arm of the lift wasn't, once I lifted it up and it touched the frame, there isn't enough clearance there. I kind of slid a piece of paper and there it wouldn't go all the way through, so that means it's touching the carbon fiber and you don't want to put any weight on that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lower it, and I've got these wonderful official NHL hockey pucks. I've been using these things for years for putting them up on lifts. I'm going to put one underneath the front end. It's only on the front end. It seems to be worse on my on the passenger side than it is on the driver's side. So I'm just gonna, as you can see now, there's a nice safety margin there between the body and the arm. All right, so we're gonna have to remove this piece here. All right, and the tool you're gonna need for that is a T4 wrench here. Sorry, not a T4, sorry, a 4mm wrench here and a hexagonal wrench. And so the back side of this pops up. Just you grab it from the sides and pop up, and then you have the two screws which are right here. So that is it, and you can see them right there. They're kind of funky. You want one with a rounded edge so you can get inside there to be able to unwind them. They're also very lightly put on. It's not very light. We can see them right there, where that one on either side here. And then on the back, it just clips in. You can see here on this, these are the mount points here. There's a mount point there and a mount point there, and they go onto these bars here and just kind of walk in and open this up here. This is the oil access, so we're going to remove that. Remember, in this car, there is no dipstick, and we'll make sure. Look at that. So I just want to tell you guys, one thing I do is I lift my car always up in small increments, and then once it's just a little bit off the ground, I'll test the stability by pushing. I want to make sure the car is stable on the lift and it doesn't have a chance of sliding off, right? If for some reason the car isn't centered on the lift and the weight isn't centered, then you have a risk of the car slipping. You don't want to do that. Not only could you get hurt, but you definitely damage your car. So I'll check it as I go up. The first set of bolts down there that I could find for the under tray is a 10mm bolt. So you're gonna need. So here we are under the car, and I'm going to show you. Here's the very back, and as I walk forward, there's this little pan here. We don't want to do anything with that, or this little edge piece here. We need to remove this large pan here, which has got screws all the way around. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, looks like 20, potentially 21 if I have to remove those. And then there's 22, 23, 24, and 25. 25 different bolts to remove here. potentially, yeah, and again, potentially I said 25 and 26. So 24 to 26, we'll find out shortly here that we've got to go ahead and remove them. And they look like they're of different sizes. So as I walk through this, I'll let you know which sizes each is. All right. These are the bolts. They're relatively long. See, they're about an inch long or so. They do have a washer with them. Make sure you don't lose them. That's one size. I believe I sell multiple sizes, but that's the 10 mil size. That's the first one. I'm going to put it in my tray there and then start going down and completing the others. They're not very tightly bolted on, so again, hand tighten only. So some warning. It looks like the bolts on the very far front edge of the tray, so towards the front of the car, are actually shorter. They're also 10 mil bolts, but I'll show you the difference. All right, so I found a third kind of 10 mil bolt to remove from the under tray. And so this one actually is still a 10 mil head. However, it's a much thicker bolt than the others. And these are on the front side. So I think there's 4 of them. So those 4 bolts also did not have washers on them. So I have just in the center, there's 4 bolts that go across the middle of the tray, or the front middle of the tray. That's the only thing that's holding up the tray right now. I'm going to remove the 2 center ones, and the 2 are actually, I'm going to remove the 2 outside ones first and the 2 center ones. That'll make it easier for me to kind of bring it down. All right, so now we've got the car up on the lift. We've removed that tray in the center there, which gives us access to all the drain points. I've decided to put on some gloves now because we're going to start to open up and remove some oil from all the different drain points on this car. There's 4 in total that you have to work with, and so I don't want to get my hands dirty. So the first one is right here. That's your first oil drain point right there. Then you've got one right here. There's another oil drain point there. And then you've got to do the 2 turbo lines, which are, sorry, this one here and this one there. There's a turbo line, there's a turbo line right there. And that's all the oil drain, all the different oil drain points that you've got. There's 4 of them in total. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. And you'll notice this one is a bolt. This one is, looks like it's might be a star there. Yep, it's a star. And these are held in by little bolts up there on the top. You can see them maybe right here. Let me see if I can get close enough. There's one right there, and there's the other one right there. Once you unbolt those bolts, the line should be able to pop out, and then oil will pour out from there. All right, so that first drain plug there is going to require a 19 mil socket right there. So I've got a 19 mil here. Interesting size, it's rather large, but that's what's going to be needed to remove it. So I'm going to go ahead and undo that right now. All right, so this is the 19 millimeter head bolt that goes into the first oil pan. That one is on the passenger side forward of the drain from the sump and the 2 turbo lines. Okay, and it requires a aluminum crush washer. And this is a new aluminum crush washer. The size you want is metric, of course. It's M14 by 18 by 1.5 millimeters. And you'll see that should drop in perfectly there and line up. And I compared it against the original, and it was exactly the right size and the right dimensions. So that's the aluminum crush washer you want on there. So now it looks like I believe the oil has gone down. I've waited like 15-20 minutes or whatever for that one. It comes down pretty rapidly, but I like to let it drip out every last bit. So once that stopped dripping, I'm going to put this one back in and then move to the other points of oil extraction. All right, so I got my torque wrench ready here. I have it set to 13 foot-pounds of torque, or 18 newton meters, which is what the MP412C has for its bolt, which happens to be exactly the same size, 19 millimeter, and needs the same aluminum washer, and it happens to be in the same location. So I'm going to start there. Remember, I've also marked it with I actually used some touch-up paint from when I had my Verde Mantis Huracan, so I kind of touched that up there, made a little mark, and I'll be able to know exactly when I'm at that, and hopefully that will line up along with when this thing ticks, and then we will know exactly the torque setting for that oil pan. All right, so the next drain plug here is this one right here. Please don't do that one. It's this one right here. You can see there's a number here underneath the engine, and there's that marker there. It is a T50 bolt right there. So that's what we're going to go ahead and undo right now. All right, so here we've got the bolts from that the drain plug from the sump, I believe, and this is kind of what it looks like here. You can kind of get a look at it. It has a T50, it requires a T50 adapter, and it's actually torqued higher than the other ones. These are torqued to 18 foot-pounds or 24 newton meters, and they have a aluminum crush washer. The aluminum crush washer, I've got a new one here, and I just measured them to make sure they're right. I'm just looking here at my notes. It's an M18, so it's larger than the M14 that we used before. M18, 24 by 1.5 millimeters. Okay, so that's the correct size. I made sure it's exactly the same size as the original one, and it just fits on there very nicely. The passenger side turbo line, which is if you're facing the car from the back, it's going to be on the right-hand side. They both have these 8mm bolts, and I recommend using extension, like I did, to get there because it's in a tight spot. If you try to get it from inside, it's not going to reach, but if you extend past the tubes and over them, you'll be able to remove it. And then once you remove it, then you're going to have to do a little bit of pulling to unhook the turbo oil line. It's got a flexible cable on it, so or flexible metal tube, so you'll be able to pull it out and have it drop into your oil pan. The turbo lines turned out to be a little bit more complex to remove or painful than any others, any of the other bolts I had to remove. So on the drive side, as I said, you should use an extension and just go through from the top, and I'll go and get a video of those right when I go to put the bolts back in. Sorry, that was on the passenger side. On the driver's side, it's even more complex, so I suggest you use your smallest 1/4 inch socket wrench, and a short extension, and then a T connector here, like that, like in a wobble, and then you'll be able to get through it. I went through. There's a rubber hose right there that's flexible, that's in the way. You can just push it up, push this through, and you'll be able to get and access that bolt. I'm sure you can find other ways. If you have a nice little small wrench that's ratcheting, that can also work as well. If you have 8mm, I didn't happen to have that with me at the time. And it was on the passenger side. I didn't try it on the driver's side because it unscrewed it, but the turbo line wouldn't come out easily. And so I kind of pushed and pulled on it. It didn't work out. I got my rubber mallet and did some light tapping on it, which loosened it up a little bit, but not enough. So when I looked at it, it's actually it's connected to a flexible hose, a metal flexible hose, and at the connection point, it kind of flanges out. So I just got my adjustable wrench right here. Here's my adjustable wrench. I set it up to fit right on and behind that where it flanges, where it expands a little bit, so it held it, and then I tightened it up, and that gave me a place to be able to lightly tap with my rubber mallet, and that kind of pushed out the turbo line on the passenger side. I'm about to see what happens here on the driver's side, and I'll let you guys know once I'm done with that. All right, so I wanted to show you where the draining is almost done. I'm on the passenger side here. This is the passenger side turbo line that I told you. This is where the screw comes up, so I just wanted to show you guys when it's up there. It's really hard to get through from here, so you have to go with that extension and come out this way. And then the point that I tapped on is this is where I put on my wrench right here. You can see where the connection is, and it kind of flanges. I just lightly put it on there and tapped it out, and that did the job. Just very lightly tapping slowly, a little bit at a time, and quite a bit of oil came out of here. On the driver's side, And I'll move over here to the driver's side so you can see that in a second. After that very little oil, I think it just dripped a little bit out. Nothing really came out. I think we got them out with those other two. But right here, and I'll zoom in over here. Okay, so you can see how the screw is up here. This is the rubber piece that I told you about up here. There's a little rubber piece right above this. It's a rubber tube, rubber hose. You can get in between it through there to get to the bolt that's right there. And that comes out, and if you do that the last one, then very little, if any, oil comes out of there. So now what we got to do is, you can see still dripping coming out here a little bit from some of the oil here. I'm going to put that back. Each of these turbo lines has a little rubber gasket on it, or grommet or whatever. We're going to have to replace those with new ones, and so that's what we're going to do next. So I'm going to remove those here in a moment and get some properly sized new ones for it. All right, so now it's time to get to the oil filter. I lowered my car. I did not put the pan back on because I want to make sure there's no oil leaks or anything like that going on. Once I put in the oil and start up the engine, I'll lift it up and make sure there's no oil leaking. So I cleaned everything down there to make sure there's not a drop of oil anywhere. So if there's an oil leak, I will see it and I will know. So anyway, to get to the oil filter, it's actually underneath this little panel here. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4 screws that you have to remove. They are also star, which is T25. Let's see here. And that is a perfect fit for all of them. These ones in the back are going to be fun to get rid of too. Hopefully nothing drops in. I've got that magnetic holder. So we are T25 here. So I went to pull out the oil filter, and so the part that I used was the Moly OX254D4. Now what I noticed is that there's a video out there for the MP412C that says to use the OX254D3. Now the video I saw from the supercar mechanic here in Woodinville that was in Russian, he was using the D4. I should get myself a D4, D3 and a D4 next time, because this one only came with one O-ring. Thankfully I have a bunch of O-rings for the smaller one that would come with the D3. I don't know if the OX254 D3 and D4s are different sizes or what, but this one fit in, and I've got the larger O-ring, and I've got smaller O-rings myself. I've got a collection there in the back, but that's one thing. And the other thing you need to realize is that it needs a huge socket wrench, which I didn't have. It looks like this is a 36 millimeter socket wrench. I did not have a 36 millimeter socket wrench. The biggest one I had was 32. And so what I ended up using was, I have my plumber's wrench, and thankfully it looks like there was just enough space that my plumber's wrench, right at the limit, ended up being 36 and allowed me to unscrew it enough so that I can use my hands. But that worked perfectly. It fits exactly right. That's kind of what I did. So in case you don't have a 36 or you don't want to go buy one, that would be the way to go. All right, and so now what we have here is, and I'll show you guys, here we go in a sec. I'm going to show you what we have there is the new filter inside, and you'll notice before I even took off the old filter and unscrewed it, I wrapped it all in paper towels so that no oil spillage would occur. And I had an extra paper towel which I grabbed the cover first and I brought it away, and then I had another one for the old filter, and that way you'll see there's no dirt, there's no oil, there's no grime inside the body of the car. So right here in your manual for your 720S on page 7.10, you'll see it says it wants Mobil 1 oil, 0W-40 engine oil. It takes up 2.4 gallons. So 2.4 gallons, that is, let's say 9.6 quarts or 9.4 quarts. It's about full, almost 10 quarts. So I got myself two 5-gallon containers of Mobil 1. Just go to Walmart. It's the best place to get it. Best prices. 5-gallon container of the European car formula Mobil 1 0W40. This costs $25 for 5 gallons. So both is $50. So you expect to spend $50 for that. This Moly oil filter cost, I think, $18 on Amazon. Your mileage may vary depending on who is selling it and at what time it's available. And then the bolts and nuts and the washers and all that, they probably cost me around 15 bucks. I got enough like for changing oil for the rest of my ownership of any McLaren cars that I'll own, I think. So I've got a bunch of those, maybe 30 of those came in little bags or whatever on Amazon. I just bought a large selection. I have a bunch of cars, so I change those out a lot. Anyway, so now I'm gonna go ahead and start filling up the oil. What I'm gonna do is I'm first gonna fill up the first 5 gallons, and then I'm gonna fill up to about 8 gallons. And then I'm gonna start up the engine and take a look at how full that is. So, because you don't want to overfill, you probably didn't take out all the oil that came in with your engine. There's probably a little bit left in. So you want to get to 8, maybe 8.5. So leave about a quart shy of what the full engine is, and then slowly increment in there based on what the engine tells you once you do that process. And I'll show you how to do that process as well. It's easy, but unfortunately there's no dipstick. You have to do it from inside the car with the engine on. I poured in the oil. I put in about 8.5 quarts of Mobil 1, and I capped up the oil thing, and I'm about to start up the engine and do the oil test. So I'm going to share with you how that all works out, and then you guys can go ahead and do it yourselves if you want to. So to check the oil level in the cars, what you need to do is get in your car, press, I would use your left foot to press the brake, and then so you can leave your right foot, you're gonna need it for gas. Press the start engine here, okay? And then go ahead, so you're gonna use this left stalk right here, and you're gonna go to the menu item that will show you the messages. You're gonna click in, you're gonna get some options, you're gonna choose oil, right? You're gonna click in on it, you're gonna pull in, it'll tell you, if you've got your left foot on the brake, you just need to lightly apply on the brake, it'll tell you apply throttle. So you're gonna just hit the throttle, you can floor it if you want, it doesn't matter. It'll limit it. It wants to bring the engine to 194 degrees first, so I've already done that ahead of time. And then that counter will start to count down 120 seconds or 2 minutes. If you're not at 194 degrees, it won't start to count down until your engine is at the operating temperature of 194 degrees. So that's what you're going to want to do, is get the car up to temperature, whichever way you want. So I've got probably, when I filled this up, I filled it up I think about 8.5. My thing said okay level. I like to have it at just a little bit more, not the red, I just want it to be in the full green. So I put in probably another quarter or half quart in there, maybe getting to 9 quarts total in the car. Let's see what that brings us up to. Boom, and there we go, we're at okay level. That's a pretty good level right there, I believe. That should be a pretty good level. It says oil level is okay, and so it's not low. So I think I can probably add a little bit more if I wanted to, but I may add just a tiny bit more. But that's kind of where you want your oil level to be at. So I ended up adding a quarter more oil, just a quarter of a quart more in there, because I like to get it perfect. And there we go, we're okay at the maximum. That's where I like it to be. So we're perfect. You don't want to add any more. It was basically little bits at a time to get there. I climbed up there. I had to do it twice to get up to where I wanted it, but I like it to be right there at the top, because the car does burn oil over time. It says so in the manual, and so you want to make sure that you check your car oil on a regular basis, maybe once a month or whatever, depending on how frequently you drive the car, and definitely before you do any car events, make sure that there's enough oil in there and enough oil so that you don't run dry. All right, now I'm going to go back and screw in all the panels back in place, and check to make sure that I've got no leaks. I already checked it once, everything was dry. I always do that. I check before I put on the panels to make sure all the places where I had removed bolts or screws are all dry.